Good morning. Welcome to session 1 of our series of presentations. I want to welcome back DeAndrea Wiggins and Leah Robinson again this year. They presented last year and were a real contribution to our conference. I think Dean Shields had a really interesting topic because she followed people's lives and talked about case studies, and that is a focus of DeAndrea and Leah, and they are from our own Wayne State Medical School. I'll be the timekeeper, and so I'll keep us on time and make sure we stop in time for questions.
Welcome. Thank you for joining our session this morning. As indicated in your program, we're going to be talking about, our theme is Detroit stories, struggles and successes. So what Leah and I will present this morning really is based on our experiences both in higher education. I also have experience in K-12, and Leah has extensive experience at the undergraduate and medical school level. So the stories that we'll share with you, one in particular today, which you received on your handout, we're going to use that to really look at 4 pillars. And those 4 pillars have been developed by Leah and I, and it is the 4 pillars of student achievement. So that's the model that we'll be using, and what we'll talk a little bit more about are the pillar of academic achievement, and that's the one that most people focus on. But the other 3, which are your non-cognitives, are the ones that impact a student's academic performance. And as you can see on the screen, those other 3 pillars will be your physical health and wellness, your financial pillar, and also your social emotional pillar. So I'm going to let Leah go ahead and get into our case study and give you a little bit more information so that we can stay timely and still take questions at the end.
Good morning. We can try it a little better. Good morning.
Good morning.
We use case study as a methodology. I thought my remote would work. We use case study as a methodology because as educators, as counselors, as social workers, what we have is a body of knowledge after so many years of experience, right? Okay? And so you kind of know, you can anticipate, understand what's going on with the student by their story, right? And after 5 lines in, you know which questions to ask, right? So what we're talking about in terms of case studies is start thinking about the students, your most hardest success, your most heartbreaking failure, and start collecting these stories as a way to train your colleagues, teach your students, and impart wisdom from the stories. Because it's through those problems people can identify very quickly and very easily. So let's not talk about theory always. Let's talk about what worked, what didn't work. And that's why we're talking about case studies as a methodology. Because we only have a half an hour, all right? This is going to go as questions come up or as we go through. We do have the case study plotted completely along, but only half an hour context-based. Some people are faster readers than others, comprehension. So if there are questions, concerns, raise your hand. But as Dr. Wiggins explained, we have over combined 40 years of experience working with students transitioning from high school to college, from college to graduate school, and trying to navigate this when they're first generation and early on. So in our talks and trying to help students, we've come up with this model in particular because we need to make sure that even though they're coming to us for academic reasons, it's not just an academic reason. There's always something that's underlying that premise. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through a case study, something that may sound like it's any student, but in particular we know whose life this impacts and how we try to impart. So, no, not a problem. Please make sure you get a case study, great. And again, we start questioning on 4 different levels. Don't mean to make you dizzy, but so first and foremost, we talk about a first-year student coming into college, and take a second to briefly read that first snippet in terms of what we're presented with as faculty, as staff, as counselors. Secretaries often have this job sometimes, depending on, who that student runs into. As you are reading through the first part of the case study, keep in mind we're talking about first-generation low-income students. So these are students who may have been the first to graduate high school in their family. These are students who may or may not have had a sibling, a parent who has attended college, but not graduated from college. So these are students who are really out there on their own for the first time. And the young person that we're looking at, Jared, is 18 and from Chicago.
he has an anatomy class, and that's going to be the focus of the case study. So there's going to be some things that we really want to pull out as you look through it. So some of the flags that should get your attention, first of all, he's an 8-year-old male from Chicago. Well, we live here in the city of Detroit. So now he's coming from another area. He may be unfamiliar with the area. Young person on his own for the first time. So coming to a new area may need assistance as far as that. He has an anatomy lab. And I don't know if anyone has had anatomy before, but it's a lot of hands-on. So now he has a medical condition. And if you think about the 4 pillars that we introduced, academic pillar, financial, social, emotional, and physical health and wellness. And it's those 3 non-cognitives that impacts the student's academic performance. So even though he's in the anatomy class and he's doing the work, he's trying to study, there's some very real things going on with his physical health and wellness because of this thing with his hand and arm that's going to impact his ability to be successful in anatomy. So as we continue through the case study, there are things that we're going to pull out. Now, as we go along, because of the length of time that we have, we've just highlighted it. You have the case study yourself. So as questions come up, we want to be able to answer those. If we are unable to get to the case study, you have it, and you also have the link to the information so that you can follow up later on online. So the first question, what should the student do? What are the student's options? Whether you are a peer, whether you are an advisor, whether you are a college professor, or whatever role you may have, these are the types of questions that you want to begin to ask so that you know what type of support services and what type of resources you can provide to this first-generation low-income student.
The reason why those things are flagged on the case study too, okay, first generation 18, the next line, incredibly tired after anatomy. That's a flag for counselors and social workers too, because there could be some other underlying depression issues as well. So that's very key. Thing with their hand and arm. I don't know if you deal with students, but that's how they present a major medical case to you, and you have to decode that, all right? And as an advisor, I'd have to ask several more questions to find out what this thing is. But that's also a flag. Here's a student coming in first semester with a medical issue in a course that requires physical stamina. And anybody who does advising too, for students with a lab class that first semester, that could be detrimental to their transcript if they cannot successfully complete that course. So this is why we picked this kind of case. So some of the things we say, what should the student do? What are the options? What should the advisor do? And what are the school or community's options? I think this is a critical piece as well. At Wayne, we have students that come from very non-traditional populations. We're not asking the right questions all the time. We have policies and procedures that might be for more traditional-based curriculum, and it might be a time to exercise some new ways of looking at how we let students come in and out of classes and, and amass credit. So this is by no way any, one-shot answer. We put a few things together, but if you look at the 4 pillars, definitely the student needs to come in and get some help academically. These are all the sources that are available, but as we said, for low-income, first-generation students, they often don't know that assistance is available. Even if assistance is available, they don't know they need it. Okay? And we don't go on the premise of getting assistance first for that solo flight and having a high solo flight so when we release, we can continue to coast. We come from a deficit model often. I only go in and ask for help when I'm really in trouble. All right? So peer group, study group, learning communities, and campus life. First semester, those things are really key for transition for a student. Financial aid. Financial aid in itself can be a whole case study. And for low-income first generation, it's a mystery. We need to do a lot more to decode for our students and for faculty as well. And then for the physical health and well-being, low-income first generation often don't have a good history with doctors, for personal care, and this would be the first time a student can come on campus perhaps and use health services and start to engage. Again, we also will neglect ourselves when we start studying because that's just kind of the default mode we're going to. I don't know if anyone has anything to contribute to something else that we may have missed. Again, we're looking at the 4 pillars, and often a student will only focus on the one to your left, when perhaps the tweak on the one on the right will take care of it.
As we move to the next portion of the case study, I want to remind you, keep in mind that even though we're focusing on a first-generation low-income student who's attending college for the first semester, these types of conversations, this type of educational dialogue can take place with any level student. So if you are working with a K-12 student, what are the types of questions that you need to ask the student so that they are prepared for the next level that they're planning to go to? What are the types of concerns that you want to bring up so that they're aware of the services that are available for them when they get to their college campus, if they're in middle school, when they get to the high school, just so that they're being made aware. And some caring adult, as Dr. Shields said, is having that conversation, developing that relationship, and getting the information to the student. All right, as we look at the next portion, the student has a 16 credit hour load. For those of us who have been to college, we know that's a lot. So he knows that he has to maintain at least 12 credits in order to be full-time and maintain whatever financial aid that he may have. His mom tells him just push through. Again, you have family members, that support system that should be there, who is not always knowledgeable about what is going on at the university level, because again, he's the first one to attend and or graduate from college in his family. So again, we have things highlighted that would be keys or cues that you could pay attention with the student that you're working with.
So, as someone who used to do advising on main campus, it's good that the offices are close in proximity to each other so that the student can leave your office for advising and go down the hall for tutoring or maybe go to student disability services. It is yet another step to walk that student out and over to those services to make sure they make an appointment. It's good to say it, but sometimes we have to practice it. And, you know, some people have a philosophy, they're adults. I agree they're adults, but there's a certain way to make sure that the student takes it to the next level. In particular, this is not an uncommon scenario. A student finds the curriculum, and says I have to take these courses in this order, 16 hours, 16 hours per semester may be too much, and typically is. Mathematically, for a GPA, for a student to continue to be successful, we need to be careful, but we're not that careful as a system, as a school, as a university. Mom is their biggest supporter, their biggest cheerleader, and the one that doesn't know. And she's going to let her kid know that he is the best thing, he's the smartest thing, but she doesn't know what a lab class is like. And that's the toughest part, because this kid is doing what everybody else does. They neglect everything else to focus on the one thing that they probably truly enjoy, even though it's kicking their butt, right? They really and truly enjoy, and so they're neglecting everything else. And this kid is now in constant pain. So he's avoiding, or he's neglecting some real warning signs to stop and get something done. What young people don't understand is pause. What young people don't want to hear is you may have to delay a semester. What young people don't understand is there is plan B and C and D and E if you think about it, if you have people around you that can educate you, if you know the system. Again, I said financial aid is a language in itself. Understanding how I can drop my classes, delay my classes soon enough so that I meet deadlines, I'm not punished, I don't have a transcript that then makes me ineligible to do this again is really critical. And this is why we look at this pillar this way, across, as opposed to, again, this kid is focusing still just on the academic issue and nothing else here. And there's people that when they come into our classroom, when they come into our office, we have to focus on all four. I encourage you to focus on all four. So let's see what happens to Jared.
Now we're looking specifically at the academics a little bit closer. You can see some of the percentages. Of course, 70% is passing, but above 70% is where you want your students to be, of course, above 75%. The guaranteed minimum pass is 75%. He needs a 74% on the next 3 exams because he's now received a 60% on anatomy. So as you look through this portion of the case study, you can see the specifics that you're dealing with. And you want to remind the students to get help early on. That's key. But also to pay attention, like Leah said, to some of the warning signs and other things that need attention that negatively impact the academic performance.
Now the student did something very smart, not a lot of students do, believe it or not, is a calculator to see what he needed next. Okay, that's very smart, triage, but that does put some undue anxiety on the student. All right? First generation students often, students who especially are males, they're used to carrying a burden they shouldn't carry by themselves, and they don't want to disappoint people. There's this kind of feeling that everybody knows I'm this special case, and so they tend, again, not to divulge that they need help. And sometimes it's just the littlest thing, the littlest tweak that will get that student to the next level. So the student does what we would naturally do when we're in difficulty, buckle down. But again, they're buckling down alone, in isolation, and that's not how this process really should work for anyone. And so we need to figure out these other ways to reach out to the student and make sure that despite how bright and smart and resilient they are, they do get the help that they need. So as you see, there are going to be some common things that come up every time, and I'm sorry about that, and there's a way to get help along the way. But again, more things can come about at this point in the student's life on campus, especially if they are in the dorm. Co-curricular issues could help smooth some of that out. Student mentoring, learning communities, and again, understanding your rights and your privileges and policies and procedures for when classes need to be dropped and added.
The next portion, now we're looking at the second set of exams. So of course we know that he had 60% on the first set of exams. Now we're looking at the second set of exams. He's already buckling down, he's doing more, he knows what he has to receive on the next set of exams because he's already calculated it. But what, in addition to that, should the conversation entail?
So we said before the student was sick on the previous exam, and on the second set of exams he gets the same score. So the student gets really, really bummed out about that. And this is not an uncommon occurrence, getting a second set, even though you buckle down. Because what happens? The teacher, the instructor, takes it easy on you in the first unit and says, okay, you've been exposed. Now we're going to up the ante, and the material's much more, and this campus has gotten in full swing. So the student who was feeling pretty poorly feels a little stronger now. And so they do, again, common mistake, is their meds run out and they're too busy to take care of maintenance. Okay? But they found an app. I'm a technology person. Dr. Wiggins is a technology person. They found something that's going to make their life 100,000 times better, right? And so they figured out a few things, and they're confident. They're resilient. They're confident that because they knew this material in high school, it's going to be okay. This particular unit is going to be okay. So he proceeds to do the same thing again for the third unit.
One of the questions to point out, especially if you're advising or if you have any role mentoring a student, is to ask them what they're going to do differently. So if they did not receive the optimal scores the first time, make sure that you're asking them, well, what are you going to do differently? Because, of course, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So you want to make sure that they are paying attention to what they can do differently. They're already buckling down, okay, but what are you going to do differently to make sure that you get the desired results?
We also have the students that say what? I do better when I study on my own. Who's guilty of that? Who's guilty of that? Okay? So I do better when I study on my own. We got to find positive ways to support students getting help. We still don't have a culture where it's cool to ask for help. And when you have the knowledge, you have a confidence that upsets someone who has no confidence whatsoever. Okay? So we have to find better ways and stop, drop, and get the help that you need. Keep hitting the wrong buttons, I apologize. Okay? So, what this student also hasn't been able to do over this academic semester or this transition is maintain a healthy lifestyle. They've not gotten regular sleep, so they probably haven't worked out. We don't know what their meals are like, but at this point in time, after taking exams, you are stressed out. Halloween, my favorite time, Halloween, we go into a lecture hall of 300 students, and what do you hear? Right? Everybody's got the plague, right? They can't wait for Thanksgiving break. Okay, and even though it's a few days, Thanksgiving break, to go home, to get some home-cooked meals or whatever, but at this point, you are emotionally and physically compromised, and you still got a good clip of time to go. And you need to find ways to stay healthy along that way, and we don't support that in the way that I think we could.
Another thing that I want to point out is you look at that second pillar under social emotional. Not all students realize that the counseling and psychological services are incorporated into their fees and tuition that they've already paid. Because you're dealing with a first-generation low-income student, a lot of times they don't seek help because they think, I can't afford it.
Yep.
And they don't know that this is already incorporated into the university services that are provided. So that's something else that a mentor or a friend, a caring individual can share with them. You don't have to come out of pocket for it. It's already covered. You've already paid it with your tuition and fees. So these are some other things that you can just remind them of or share with them because they may not know.
Another thing with balance with students too is if you have the time, some of us do, some of us don't. If you can provide some stable time for the student just to check in with you, an email, a Skype, a text, whatever you're comfortable with, that also are those are those small tweaks that the student says, you know what, someone in the system really cares. Someone in the system is, and what that does is, oops, I got to be accountable now. So let me move a little faster, let me try a little harder. And those are the things that close the gaps for the students.
It lets them know that they're not that child in the back of the classroom that has been forgotten about.
We apologize again for the speed, but we want to make sure we try to get through this text to show you the things that we've been working with.
All right, now we're on to the third set of exams. So we've got some other flags that we want to pay attention to.
So, got the same scores 3 times in a row. How would you feel if you got the same scores 3 times in a row? Right? Okay, right? So now you know at this point, well, you don't know because you still think you can get 100%. That's the reality, is you really think you can get 100%. Okay? Again, we pulled this straight from our working conditions. So the medical condition, of course, flares up, right? And still hasn't gotten the help that they need, and now girlfriend is about to come into town. And there's no way, if you haven't told anybody that you're struggling, there's no way you're gonna confess now, right? I see smiles. I think somebody's been through this situation before. Okay? There's no way you're gonna, say no, you can't come. We're gonna do everything we planned this weekend, even though I need those 1,800 hours to finish my other assignments. Okay?
So again, back to the 4 pillars: academic, social, emotional, financial, and physical health and wellness. Those are always going to impact a student's achievement. So again, the 3 non-cognitives impacts a student's academic performance.
And again, we keep telling you it's these little tweaks. You make the student stop and say, okay, what's really essential before I move forward? And I got the 5-minute warning, so we got to move into the last section. So what we're going to do is just open it up really for solutions with the school and the community, what you can do, what you should do, what you've tried, what works, what doesn't work, as to look at. We know we have students that come in with a lot of problems. They don't know they have those problems, okay? It's not that it's, they're a victim. They don't know that these are things that are going to happen to them along the way. They're 18, they're young, they're vibrant, things happen. So what do you do as people who are working with these students, these type of students? What are some of the things that work for you in terms of closing this gap and trying to get that diploma, or help that student get the diploma?
I think like both of you guys suggested is that powerful piece of having that relationship and just being available, text message, and saying the things that nobody knows, especially first generation students.
Not taking anything for granted.
Exactly.
Yes.
I think recently what I did with a student was sat down with him at Starbucks and talked through his rushing through his aggravation and feeling like he had to overcome what he couldn't do before by himself. That was making him make a lot of mistakes. So I sat down and talked him through and asked him to slow down. Your GPA didn't carry over from the last community college to this one. You get to start over new. You don't have to stress yourself out. Do better than what you did before. Just slow down.
I like, the thing I like about what she said is they went to Starbucks, so it's maybe off campus, maybe not off campus, but somewhere that's not intimidating for the student. They can relax for a moment and have that downtime to really be able to reflect and have an open, honest conversation with that caring individual.
I think it's important to point out, intimidating. It's your office, you got the fountain going, you have green plants or whatever. You still are academic, whatever, comma, MD, PhD, MA, or whatever, and you sit across a desk from that person. It's something we still need to realize, that coming into an official place, an office, is very intimidating. For folks that, you know, have to do regular things, but I need help, and we need to be able to meet students a little better at where they're at.
Other questions or comments?
Kind of coupled to the relationships, like offering alternative assignments or giving options to the students, I think is important, so that you can like plan an individualized plan for that student. So say the second exam, if he does better, then it'll replace the prior exam's grade, etc.
Okay, that's good.
Well, I think, 18-year-old, is still a kid. They're unfamiliar with the system, and we've been in the system, we know, and sometimes you need to tell them, these are the questions, I'm going to walk you here, you're going to say this, and they were going to then take you to the next step. Because they say, what you need to do is X, Y, and Z, they're going to walk out your office and go back home, and they're not going anywhere, because the next step is scary, the next step is intimidating, and a lot of these people are run on fear of being embarrassed and being humiliated, so you need to give them the words step by step by step, so they don't feel incompetent when they go to the doctor, go to, talk to their financial advisor.
Absolutely, very good. People say no to what's confusing. And I think that's the one thing that we have to remember. So if it takes with that first time, walking with them, giving them that additional sense of confidence that they can do it, then the next time maybe they'll be confident enough to go on their own. Very good point. Yes.
I was just going to add, and I'm not sure if this is currently in place, but to have a mentor assigned to a new freshman, or an advisor, where they have to be accountable to that person throughout at least the first year, and if not the second, but that person is checking up on them, regularly.
That would be great. That would be great.
One point I wanted to add these two together, checklists. Okay, if we had in each office a checklist, even that simple piece of paper, I've walked out, I've done this, I've got the signature, again, smaller pieces of accountability. I don't know what to say, I don't know what questions to ask. This first scenario started with, the student was required to meet with an advisor. Okay, so I've met the advisor, I'm not going back because I've done what I'm supposed to do. That's a default thinking, we do that a lot. I've done what I'm supposed to do, I won't ever go back because I don't have to. I don't see that as something important to do. There are learning communities on campus, and I think a lot of them with the dorms, I don't know how they work, but there should be some type of layering of student faculty on the floor, student mentor on the floor, in the dorm, in the major, in gen ed, maybe some type of tier with where they think they want to go into, so that again, you do have some more personal contacts with the students and trying to figure out, I know what I want to be when I first started college. By the time, I actually am what I am, I had some detours. Who helped me out with that? And how did I know that I needed that help to make those decisions?
At the bottom of your sheet, it does list the address of the presence, so if you would like to revisit it or if you want to share it, it is publicly available. Thank you for your participation and your attendance in our session. Yes, sir.
Do we know how he did on the last exam?
Unfortunately, he did not pass that class. This is a story, a combination of stories of several people, but he would have to either re-exam for that course at the end of the year to hopefully take one re-exam for all 4 exams to pass, or come back and have to take it again.
Very good. Thank you so much.